CDL Practice Test, Florida, Air Brake, Part 6. Question number 132. The air compressor governor controls A. When air is pumped into the air storage tanks. B. The air pressure applied to the brakes. C. The speed of the air compressor. The correct answers here. A. When air is pumped into the air storage tanks. Explanation. The air compressor runs at all times while the engine is running. To keep the air pressure from eventually rising too high, the air compressor governor controls when the compressed air from the air compressor should flow into the air reservoirs. When air pressure drops to a certain level, typically 100 C, the governor cuts in and routes the compressed air into the storage tanks. When air pressure rises to a certain level, typically 125 C, the governor cuts out and routes the compressed air out of the system into the atmosphere. Question number 133. What is a supply pressure gauge used for? A. To show how much pressure is in the air tanks. B. To show how much pressure you have used in this trip. C. To show how much pressure is going to the brake chambers. The correct answers here. A. To show how much pressure is in the air tanks. Explanation. The air supply pressure gauge is connected to the air tank, or tanks, and shows how much air pressure is present. Question number 134. What is the best way to test your vehicle's low air pressure warning signal? A. Manually let the air out of your brakes and see if the signal comes on. B. With the engine off, step on and off the brake pedal to lower the air pressure below 60 C. C. Pump the brakes while your vehicle is fully on. The correct answers here. B. With the engine off, step on and off the brake pedal to lower the air pressure below 60 C. Explanation. The best way to test the low air pressure warning signal is to turn off the engine of your vehicle while leaving the electric power on, then step on and off the brake pedal. The low pressure warning signal should come on when the pressure falls below 60 C. You should never need to get down to 30 C. Question number 135. Why must air tanks be drained? A. Your transmission fluid may drain out. B. Your brakes may fail because of water freezing. C. Your left side brake will cease to operate. The correct answers here. B. Your brakes may fail because of water freezing. Explanation. Your air tanks hold a mixture of water and compressor oil. If left in to collect at the bottom, the water may freeze and cause brake failure. Question number 136. Which conditions are front wheel brakes good under? A. Only wet or icy conditions. B. All weather conditions. C. Not ideal under any conditions. D. Only good weather. The correct answers here. B. All weather conditions. Explanation. Front wheel brakes have been shown to be ideal under all weather and driving conditions, and do not cause skids, even in icy road conditions. Question number 137. Compressed air usually contains what substances that are harmful to the brake system? A. Dust and compressor oil. B. It does not contain harmful substances. C. Water and dust. D. Water and compressor oil. The correct answer here. D. Water and compressor oil. Explanation. Water and some compressor oil are harmful to the brake system because the water can freeze and, therefore, cause brake failure. Question number 138. Emergency brakes are A. Not required on trucks. B. Only required on trailers. C. Only required when transporting hazardous materials. D. Required on tractors. The correct answer here. D. Required on tractors. Explanation. All trucks, truck tractors, and buses must be equipped with emergency brakes and parking brakes. Question number 139. A low air pressure warning signal should activate. A. When tank pressure falls below 120 C. B. When tank pressure falls below 10 C. C. When tank pressure falls below 5 C. D. When tank pressure falls below 60 C. The correct answer here. D. When tank pressure falls below 60 C. Explanation. In an air brake system, a low air pressure warning signal must come on if air pressure in the tanks falls below 60 C. This warning signal may come in the form of a light, a buzzer, or a wigwag. Question number 140. What controls the parking brakes in newer vehicles? A. A knob located next to the steering wheel. B. A circular, red labeled switch. C. A spring-loaded lever. D. A diamond-shaped, yellow, push-pull control knob. The correct answer here. D. A diamond-shaped, yellow, push-pull control knob. Explanation. The diamond-shaped, yellow, push-pull control knob is the control for the parking brakes in newer vehicles. It must be pulled out to put the parking brakes on and pushed in to release them. Question number 141. The driver must be able to see a low pressure warning, which comes on before pressure in the service air tank falls below A. 100 C. B. 60 C. C. 80 C. The correct answer here. B. 60 C. Explanation. The low pressure warning is set to come on before your air tank pressure drops below 60 C. Question number 142. The air compressor will stop pumping air into the air tanks at C. A. 125. B. 150. C. 100. The correct answer here. A. 125. Explanation. The air compressor will start pumping air into the air tanks at about 100 C and stop at about 125 C. This action is controlled by the air compressor governor. Question number 143. What is a dual air brake system? A. A two-brake system. One brake operates the front brakes, and one operates the back brakes. B. A two-brake system. One brake for each side of the vehicle. C. A two-brake system. One brake for daytime driving and one for nighttime driving. The correct answers here. A. A two-brake system. One brake operates the front brakes, and one operates the back brakes. Explanation. Many heavy-duty trucks and buses have dual air brakes, which are two sets of air brakes for the front and back axles, but controlled by one brake pedal. Question number 144. Chemical changes in the brake lining, which reduce friction and cause expansion of the brake drums, is known as A. Brake overheating, B. Green fade, C. Surface scorch, D. Brake fade. The correct answers here. D. Brake fade. Explanation. Excessive heat causes chemical changes to the brake lining, which reduces friction, and it causes expansion of the brake drums. As this happens, the shoes and linings have to move farther to contact the drums, causing the brakes to fade. Question number 145. Why must you study air brakes in the state of Florida? A. Otherwise, you cannot receive a CDL at all. B. All trucks have air brakes in Florida. C. Otherwise, you can only receive a CDL permit. D. Otherwise, you will have to get a CDL with restrictions. The correct answers here. D. Otherwise, you will have to get a CDL with restrictions. Explanation. In the state of Florida, you can only receive a CDL with a restriction that allows you to drive only vehicles without air brakes, if you have not studied and passed the section of the CDL exam for air brakes. So, good luck. Question number 146. In a newer vehicle, you apply the parking brake. A. By using a round red knob. B. By using a square green knob. C. By using a black round knob. D. By using a diamond-shaped yellow knob. The correct answers here. D. By using a diamond-shaped yellow knob. Explanation. In a newer vehicle with air brakes, the parking brake is controlled by a diamond-shaped yellow knob. The knob is pulled out to apply the parking brakes and pushed in to release them. Question number 147. With the engine at operating RPM, air tank pressure in a dual system should build from 85C to 100C within how much time? A. 60 seconds. B. 30 seconds. C. 90 seconds. D. 45 seconds. The correct answers here. D. 45 seconds. Explanation. In a vehicle with standard air tanks, the time it takes to increase from 85C to 100C should be about 45 seconds. If the pressure does not build fast enough, the pressure may become too low while driving, which can be dangerous. Question number 148. What is the best way to test if your vehicle's spring brakes come on automatically? A. Continue to step on and off the brake pedal until the manufacturer's low C specification has been met for spring brakes to deploy. B. On tractor-trailer vehicles, continue to step on and off the brake pedal until the parking brake valve pops out. C. On single vehicles, continue to step on and off the brake pedal until the parking brake valve pops out. D. All of the answers. The correct answers here. D. All of the answers. Explanation. On both tractor-trailer vehicles and single vehicles, you can test whether your vehicle's spring brakes will come on automatically by continuing the same method you use for testing the low air pressure warning signal, stepping on and off your brake pedal, this time until you reach an even lower C reading and the parking brake valve closes or pops out. Question number 149. Typically, the air compressor should start pumping at about A. 125 C, B. 100 C, C. 150 C. The correct answer is here, B. 100 C. Explanation. Typically, the air compressor will start pumping around 100 C and stop at about 125 C. Check the manufacturer's specifications for the exact values. Question number 150. At what measurement is the safety valve usually set to open? A. 100 C, B. 200 C, C. 150 C, D. 250 C. The correct answer is here, C. 150 C. Explanation. The safety valve, which is meant to protect the system from having too much pressure, is usually set to open when the system reaches 150 C. Question number 151. You are driving on a steep downgrade and have the engine in the appropriate low gear. If your safe speed is 45 miles per hour, you should not apply the brakes until you have reached what speed? A. 60 miles per hour, B. 55 miles per hour, C. 50 miles per hour, D. 45 miles per hour. The correct answer is here, D. 45 miles per hour. Explanation. On a steep downgrade, the brakes should be used in conjunction with the slowing action of the engine in low gear. You should not apply the brakes until you have reduced speed to your safe speed. When you do reach your safe speed, you should apply the brakes gradually until you reach 5 miles per hour below your safe speed. Question number 152. When the brakes are applied, brake shoes and linings are pushed against A. the brake lining, B. the brake pads, C. the inside of the brake chamber, D. the inside of the drum. The correct answer is here, D. the inside of the drum. Explanation. In order to stop, the brakes must be applied. This causes the brake shoes and linings to be pushed against the inside of the drum, which creates friction. This friction slows the vehicle down. Question number 154. How do drum brakes primarily differ from disc brakes? A. Drum brakes have one chamber, disc brakes have two or more chambers. B. Drum brakes use an S-cam, disc brakes use a C-clamp. C. Drum brakes use two counter-rotating drums, or one drum is stationary. To apply braking force, disc brakes separate the brake shoes using a disc. D. Drum brakes use an S-cam to separate the brake shoes against the drum. Disc brakes use a caliper to squeeze the brake pads against the disc. The correct answer is here, D. Drum brakes use an S-cam to separate the brake shoes against the drum. Disc brakes use a caliper to squeeze the brake pads against the disc. Explanation. Air pressure is used the same way in both braking systems. The standard control valves, relays, and piping work on either system. Drum brakes use air pressure to rotate an S-cam, which causes brake shoes to press against the inside of the drum. Disc brakes use air pressure to squeeze a caliper, which causes brake pads to squeeze against the outside of the disc. A tiny number of older drum brake systems use a wedge to separate the shoes, instead of an S-cam, but the operating principles are the same. Wedge systems are obsolete. Disc brakes are uncommon on trucks, but you should be able to spot a disc system and identify the basic parts. Question number 155. If the spring brakes are on, you should A. Press the accelerator. B. Move the steering wheel. C. Be especially careful because the brakes may fail. D. Not use the brake pedal. The correct answer here, D. Not use the brake pedal. Explanation. You should not apply the brake pedal if the spring brakes are activated. The brakes could be damaged if they are subjected to the force of air pressure in the springs at the same time. Question number 156. The total stopping distance for air brakes is longer than that for hydraulic brakes because of A. Reaction distance. B. Brake fade. C. Brake lag. The correct answer here, C. Brake lag. Explanation. When you depress the brake pedal on a vehicle with air brakes, there will be a lag of about a half second before the air flows through the lines to reach the brakes. This will add to your total stopping distance. Question number 157. Before a vehicle with dual air brakes is driven, pressure of at least should be built up in both braking systems. A. 10 C. B. 25 C. C. 50 C. D. 100 C. The correct answer here, D. 100 C. Explanation. Before driving a vehicle with a dual air brake system, allow time for the air compressor to build up pressure of at least 100 C in both the primary and secondary systems.